All right, so if I have to summarize the most important things about leadership, the three things I think are important is be a man and woman of character, live a life of excellence so that you strive to do everything to the upper level of your potential, that you stretch, and through stretching you're going to grow, and that your new area that you had stretched into now is your new normal, and then stretch again, and by stretching again and again and again you become better and stronger, and you just keep improving. And then be a man and woman of passion, because once you find your why, nothing is going to stand in the way of you accomplishing it. Once you find your why, your purpose, you'll pay the price for success. You will not negotiate what it's going to take. Once you find your why, you'll do whatever is necessary to accomplish the mission and succeed. And then you got to be able to cope in a complex environment. I was in the Pentagon in 9/11 when the plane hit the Pentagon. And I remember standing outside looking at the Pentagon, knowing that life as we knew it was going to change dramatically. And it certainly has. And then even though there was a corridor that did not want us to go back in, I went back in anyway. I found a way to get back in. And we helped out with all the circumstances that were there. And as complex as the world that was, it was tremendously important that you understood the complexity. You understood that it was very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But you exercised those senior leader traits that were necessary to provide the clarity to understand the vision, its purpose, its strategic objectives, and then make sure that you develop the programs that were going to accomplish those objectives, and you're going to get the resources for each one of those programs. We had to also, I think, about leadership, you have to deal with adversity and setbacks. You'll see on my slide there, I said, here's a good example. Why do we box at West Point? At West Point, we require every single cadet, man and women, to box. I was under a lot of criticism for making men and women box because of the issue that it can relate to concussions and concussion injuries. And I understood how sincere and significant that was. And we put tremendous mitigating factors in place to minimize damage with concussions and things like that. And we were very successful in that regard. But the whole idea of boxing was the only thing that we did at West Point that pit one cadet against another in full body contact. And it was not necessarily the combative skill that we tried to develop and teach in each one of the cadets. We tried to teach each and every cadet to deal with fear. Because when you're pit against another cadet in a boxing ring and it's just you and him or you and her, and you're there to box it out, there's a fear factor. And that translates to graduation and then being a leader in adverse conditions in the crucible of ground combat. Because when you're in the crucible of ground combat in the United States Army at some godforsaken place in the world, and those men and women in your organization are looking to you for leadership, and you are fearful, you know how to deal with fear. You know how to be able to conquer fear, and you know how to be able to deal with fear from an organizational standpoint. And that's why we box. Because when adversity is there and a setback is there, we want to teach people to have the grit, to be resilient, to have the tenacity to persevere and to be successful. And that's why it's important. And yes, we understand the risk, and we will do everything we can to mitigate that risk. But the crucible of ground combat requires leaders with grit, perseverance, tenacity, who shared hardships and who lead from the front. And that's one of the reasons, that's why we box, to deal with adversity and setbacks. Okay, students, I hope you got something out of that presentation on leadership with West Point's background and what West Point does and how West Point organizes itself for success, what that growth model looks like, putting cadets under those circumstances. I'm glad I got to share with you what I think are my top 10 leadership principles, and especially excellence, character, and passion, because I'm very passionate myself about those three. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.